Let me first start by thanking my friend Catherine, the Mission of Hungary to the UN, and the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy for the opportunity to be here this morning, early afternoon, sharing with you some reflections, some thoughts of a very interesting discussion. We all know the United Nations is at a pivotal time in history. 70 years after the foundation of this organization, the Sustainable Development Goals are upon us. Finally, they're here in a couple of days. This is truly a significant event. And we all know that the signing of a treaty, the adoption of a resolution, as we're about to take at the highest level later this week, seems to take seconds on TV. But we must not forget that this moment is the culmination of arduous negotiations and compromise by people who have set aside their differences to build trust and understanding. The post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda is the result of 2 years of negotiations at the highest levels of government. The adoption later this week is a milestone on the path to greater global cooperation. Indeed, the wide range of goals and objectives that we have set for ourselves for the next 15 years cannot be achieved without building trust and understanding. These principles are not built instantaneously. They are the result of decades of cooperation, of identifying mutual shared interests, and of work towards a common goal. The Sustainable Development Goals are now the powerful common goal that unifies the world. The dynamic nature of the new global challenges, and my colleague from Greece spoke about some of them, we have today reflects the dynamic nature of cultural diversity. News and events now happen live in real time, and there's a remarkable capacity of cultures around the world to adapt and collaborate. And this is what will allow us to renew our approach to sustainable development, democratic governance, social cohesion, and the application of the principles of human rights. Climate change, migratory fluxes, increased poverty, safety, security are concerns shared by all the people of the world. And with shared concern also comes shared responsibility. The United Nations, our 70-year-old organization, must reflect this new reality. And we must be ready to act in a fast, unified, and targeted way to face the immense challenges that are on the horizon. Intercultural dialogue, and I too like that reference better than multicultural, which we are stopping to use, is an increasingly inevitable principle in international relations. History is littered with events where differences were a source of violence, a source of conflicts. We are now more interconnected than ever. Through real-time communication, we're breaking down the boundaries that kept us apart. It's no longer the Berlin Wall, it's the World Wide Web, Google, FaceTime, Twitter. It's breaking down the barriers between us. Slowly but surely, we are learning to use our differences to learn from each other's experiences, to foster dialogue, to share best practices, and to advance together. Nonetheless, intercultural dialogue does not only take place on the world stage. Within countries, every day, communities struggle to achieve greater cohesion and peaceful coexistence. My country, Panama, takes pride in its strategic geographic position that has historically provided a bridge, a platform for exchange and dialogue. And this is in fact the basis for our foreign policy. At the national level, we take pride in our multi-ethnic, multi-religious nature. As per the 2010 national census, 12% of Panamanians self-identified as indigenous, while other 9% self-identify as Afro-Panamanians. We also have people of Chinese descent, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, all living side by side in a country of fewer than 4 million people. We're making great efforts to capitalize on this diversity in order to create a more egalitarian society that gives a voice to everyone, regardless of their ethnicity or culture. In recent years, the government of Panama has taken great measures to improve representation in the government, public policy and legislation to encourage greater participation by women, half of the population, in position of decision making. Also, an executive secretariat for Afro-Panamanians was created in the last 5 years. Furthermore, our national laws recognize and respect the rights and traditions of indigenous peoples, including the right to own land. In fact, we have 5 preservation areas for indigenous people, which encompass 28% of our territory. The government also recognizes traditional authorities, traditions, and customs. And a Vice Ministry for Indigenous Affairs was appointed, which led a development plan of and for indigenous people of Panama, facilitated by the UN. Listening to indigenous Panamanians, I like the underscore listening, and Mark has just stepped out, but it has really helped us to make our society better. I would also like, with your indulgence, my friend Bernardito, to quote Pope Francis, who will visit us shortly here at the UN, and I open quote, "We can join one another in taking up the duty of serving justice and peace, which should become a basic principle of all our exchanges. A dialogue which seeks social peace and justice is in itself, beyond all merely practical considerations, an ethical commitment, which brings about a new social situation." And I close quote. Of course, we have a long way to go, but we are undertaking significant institutional measures to ensure that the diverse voices of Panama contribute to the national dialogue. In turn, this allows the government to provide better policy to all communities living in Panama. Through dialogue and mutual respect, we will ensure that all Panamanians live in a respectful, peaceful environment that promotes the rule of law and the principles of human rights. To ensure that our promises become action, the government of Panama established a permanent national committee to oversee compliance of our human rights commitments at the domestic and international levels. This is also why my country has announced its candidacy to the Human Rights Council for the period 2016-2018. More commercial allowed. Let me close with a few general recommendations. A new social situation where no one will be left behind cannot be achieved through law and regulations alone. A progressive, universal strategy is needed to ensure that a culture of peace becomes part of people's everyday lives. Us, as international community, and individually, as stakeholders, we must strive to promote dialogue and mutual understanding while enhancing respect for religious and cultural diversity, strengthen the principles of freedom of thought, belief, and expression, eliminate all forms of discrimination and intolerance, develop and extend policies that promote justice, security, the rule of law, peacemaking initiatives, democratic decision-making, and humanitarian intervention, integrate the values of citizenship and tolerance in national education programs, encourage greater participation of women in the prevention of conflicts and peace-building activities in post-conflict situations, and make effective use of the media for the promotion and distribution of information on a culture of peace. We need diplomacy in all its forms to achieve unity at all levels of governance. Even though the use of force is what usually makes front-page news, it is diplomacy and open dialogue with the aim to build trust at the policy, national and international levels, and I would add all the way to the individual levels, to every single one of us here, that which will make our world truly stronger and more sustainable. Thank you.